Hello everyone, I'm Mr.Graveveil, a horror storyteller. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos like this. Now, let's begin. It was one of those routes you try to hit during the day. 100 miles of forest-lined highway with no towns, no exits, and no signal. Just a dark ribbon cutting through nowhere. I was behind schedule. Night had fallen hours ago, and I still had half the stretch ahead. I didn't mind driving at night. Used to think it was peaceful, easier without traffic. But there's a difference between night and pitch black. Between quiet and silence so complete it presses on your ears. That part of the country had a way of swallowing light. Even with high beams on, I could only see a few yards ahead. Trees loomed like walls, and the road felt more like a tunnel than open air. The cab was warm, filled with the low hum of the engine and the occasional hiss of the brakes. My dashboard lights cast a soft green glow over everything inside. Outside, though, there was nothing. No stars, no moon, just black. I'd been driving for close to 10 hours. Took a break a while back, grabbed coffee, stretched my legs. It was wearing off. I rolled down the window for a blast of cold air, turned up the radio, but it was just static. Scanned for anything, more static. The fatigue was creeping in. That heavy-eyed, slow-thought kind that makes the lines on the road start to shift. You blink harder, rub your face, talk to yourself. Anything to stay sharp. I kept telling myself I'd stop after the next hour. Maybe catch a nap in a rest area. But there hadn't been one in miles, and the GPS hadn't shown any coming soon. The dark outside felt different that night. Not just the absence of light, something else. It felt like the world had emptied, like I was the last person left awake. That's when I saw it. A flicker on the right side, just beyond the reach of the headlights. Small, close to the ground. I didn't get a good look. It was there and then gone, like a shadow pulled back behind a tree. I sat up straighter, gripped the wheel tighter, told myself it was nothing. A branch, an animal, a trick of the light and tired eyes. But the hairs on my arms were standing up. I drove in silence, trying to shake the image. Maybe it was nothing. A deer caught in the edge of the beam, a branch moving in the wind. My brain was tired. I kept repeating that, hoping it would stick. But I couldn't let it go. Something about what I saw, it had a shape, a posture. It didn't move like an animal. It didn't crouch or dart. It stood still, upright, like someone waiting. About half a minute passed. I wasn't looking for it, but my eyes flicked to the side mirror like they always do. Just routine. And that's when I saw it again. Far behind me, caught in the faint, pulsing red of the trailer lights, was a small figure. Standing on the shoulder. Still, I didn't slam the brakes, didn't even say anything out loud. I just sat up straighter, heart thudding like it was trying to warn me before my mind caught up. There wasn't supposed to be anyone out here, not this late. Not this far from anything. The figure didn't move. A rational voice in my head tried to explain it away again. Maybe it was a signpost, a fence post, something upright catching light at the perfect angle, but the shape wasn't right. It was too narrow at the top, too solid through the middle. It had arms. I could see them, loose at the sides, hanging. I eased off the accelerator. My eyes locked on the mirror. The truck coasted a bit before I touched the brakes, gently, no sudden stops. Just enough to slow. Part of me wanted to keep going, pretend I hadn't seen it. But another part, maybe the same part that makes us check on strangers, refused to leave it behind. I pulled over onto the gravel shoulder, hit the hazards. The rhythmic pulse of red light filled the darkness like a warning heartbeat. For a moment, I didn't do anything else. Just sat there, hands gripping the wheel, breathing steady but shallow. I looked again. The figure hadn't moved. No flashlight, no car pulled over, no movement. Just a small body standing perfectly still in the dark. That's when the unease started crawling in deeper. A car might have made this make sense. Someone broken down. A family in trouble. But there was nothing. Just that figure, alone. I shifted into reverse. Carefully, the truck jolted a little as it settled into gear. My hands moved automatically, checking the mirrors, watching the line of the trailer. I inched back slowly, tires crunching against loose stone. As the red light crawled closer to where I'd seen it, I felt my chest tighten. The road felt narrower. The air in the cab grew heavier, even with the fan blowing low. Then I saw it again, same spot, same figure. A small silhouette on the shoulder. It hadn't moved an inch. I stopped backing up, let the engine idle, and waited. The figure stood where I'd first seen it, right at the edge where the gravel shoulder gave way to trees. Close enough to make out a few details now that the rear lights were casting more color on the road. Small frame, bare arms and legs. Light fabric, loose fitting. Pajamas, the kind you'd see on a little kid. Something about them looked almost faded, like the colors had been washed out by time or moonlight. But there was no moon. They weren't facing the truck. More like turned slightly, looking parallel to the road. As if just wandering, but not moving. Not anymore. I killed the engine. The sudden silence left a ringing in my ears. I rolled down the window halfway, trying to get a better view. Cold air rushed in, thick with pine and damp soil. My breath showed in the air, but they weren't shivering. They weren't reacting at all. "Hey," I called out. My voice cracked a little. "You all right?" No answer, no flinch, no glance in my direction. The figure remained perfectly still, arms at their sides, head tilted slightly forward. I leaned a bit farther out the window. "Kid, you okay? You lost?" Still nothing. The rational part of me was screaming to stay put. Lock the doors, call for help. But help was hours away, and I had no signal. My phone was a useless brick in the passenger seat. CB radio hadn't picked anything up in hours. I stared at the figure. Something about the stillness was wrong. Not like someone waiting, more like something placed. I opened the door. Not all the way, just enough to let more cold air hit my face. The hinges creaked too loud in the quiet. "Where are your parents?" I asked. "Do you need help?" Finally a shift, just a small one. The head turned slightly, not towards me, just slightly more forward. A fraction of movement, like it was registering my voice, but didn't know how to respond. "Can you hear me?" I tried again. "You shouldn't be out here." Slowly, the figure took a step. Just one, barefoot on gravel, light catching skin pale as chalk. Then another step, slow and deliberate. They were small. 6, maybe 7 years old. Way too young to be out here alone. I gripped the edge of the door. My stomach felt tight. The night wasn't cold anymore. It was heavy. The figure stopped again, just standing there. Close enough now that I could see their hair was short, dark, but their face still somehow unclear. Not shadowed, just indistinct. Like the light didn't want to touch it right. Then they spoke. Voice soft, barely audible over the trees rustling behind them. "Lost." Just that word. Thin, flat, like a whisper that had been waiting too long to come out. I didn't know what to say. The human part of me wanted to go help. The other part, the older part, the one that keeps us alive, was trying to pull me back inside the cab. I stayed halfway out the door, hand on the edge, trying to decide what to do. The kid hadn't moved again. Just stood there, barefoot in thin pajamas, skin pale in the red light. They looked toward the woods. A slow turn of the head, not robotic, but too deliberate to feel natural. Like they were remembering to act human. I followed their gaze. The trees were packed tight together, pine trunks like dark bars. No trail, no light, just forest. Thick, dense, silent. The kid raised one hand, not high, just a loose gesture. A small motion, like pointing without commitment. "In there," they said. I blinked. "What's in there?" "Home," the voice answered. The word hit wrong. Not just what they said, but how. It was too steady, no emotion behind it. No fear, no hope. Like someone reciting a word they'd learned without knowing what it meant. I looked again. There was no path. No sign of any house, any road, any light. Just a solid wall of trees. You live in there? A nod. Mechanical, small. I didn't believe it. Couldn't. No one lived out here. There were no signs of life for miles. No fences, no mailboxes, no tire tracks. You want me to go with you? I asked. The kid tilted their head again. I can't find the way. It's too dark. There it was again, that strange neutrality. Not a scared child asking for help. Not someone in danger. Just a statement. Clean, cold. I took a slow breath. My boots stayed on the floor mat. My legs didn't move. Look, if you're lost, I can help, but I can't go into the woods. It's not safe at night. The kid took one step closer. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Just closing the space. I can't go alone, they said. It's too far without light. My hand was still on the door. I tightened my grip. This wasn't panic. It wasn't yelling or begging. But something in their voice made me want to shut the door and drive. Not because of what they said, but because of what they didn't say. The kid took another step. I noticed something strange then. Their feet hadn't left marks on the gravel. No prints, no disturbance, just silence. I stared. My mind started reaching for explanations. Maybe the rocks were packed too tight. Maybe the light was wrong. But the feeling in my chest said otherwise. Then they said it again. Please, just help me find the way. It's just a little farther. You can bring your light. I didn't move. Couldn't. Something about the way they asked, too calm, too knowing, made my fingers curl tighter around the door. They waited, silent, as if time didn't matter to them. I stared at the kid. They were close now. 5 feet, maybe less. The headlights lit them from the side, but something about their face still didn't register clearly. I could see shapes, eyes, mouth, nose, but they seemed muted, as if viewed through fogged glass. They didn't look scared, or cold, or tired. They just looked blank. The silence stretched. I thought about reaching for the door, for the handle, for anything to break the stillness, but my hands wouldn't move. Then I saw something. It wasn't in front of me. It wasn't even moving. It was behind them. Something about the darkness behind the kid shifted. At first, I thought it was the shadows playing tricks. The tail end of a tree trunk, maybe a low branch, but it had a shape, a direction, a connection. Something was stretched from the middle of their back into the woods. It didn't sway like clothing. It didn't catch the light. It was low, dark, and thick like a heavy cord made of night itself. It extended from under their pajama top, disappearing into the tree line without a sound or shimmer. I blinked, squinted. It was still there. My throat tightened. "What is that?" I asked. No answer. The kid tilted their head, but didn't turn around. Didn't look. Just stood there while that thing remained tense, unmoving, anchored. I swallowed hard. "There's something behind you." This time they did respond. Just one word, soft and dull. "Nothing." I almost laughed. The denial was too calm. Too fast, like it had been practiced. "It's attached to you," I said. "I can see it. Right there." Still, the kid didn't turn. Didn't even flinch. Then came a sound I hadn't heard before. Not a voice. A low hum, barely audible, coming from the direction of the woods. Faint. Not mechanical. Not natural. I looked past the figure. Deep into the dark. Nothing moved. But the cord, whatever it was definitely real. Real enough for my eyes to lock on it, like it was the only thing on the planet. My legs were tensed now, every muscle ready to bolt. But I didn't move. Then the kid spoke again. "You're not supposed to see that." That stopped me colder than anything before. It wasn't a threat, not quite. It was closer to disappointment. Like something had slipped, like I'd noticed a trick too soon. I leaned back slowly toward the cab, toward the safety of the seat, the ignition, the wheel. My fingers found the doorframe again, gripped it tight. "I'm going," I said quietly. "No," the kid replied, voice flat again. "You can't leave yet." The silence between us cracked. I didn't say another word. I just shifted my weight, slowly, inching back into the cab. My fingers found the key. I turned it. The engine came to life with a shudder, loud and familiar. The sound felt like rescue. The kid flinched. It was the first time they reacted to anything. Not big, just a sudden tightening of the shoulders. A twitch, like they hadn't expected noise. I slammed the door, locked it, threw the truck into drive. My hands shook on the wheel. My foot hit the pedal harder than it should have. The truck surged forward, groaning under the sudden pull. The cab shook. The lights swung, catching the trees in sharp flashes. I didn't look at the mirror. I didn't look at the kid. I just drove. The rig picked up speed. The tires howled against the pavement. The air inside was hot now, full of breath and adrenaline. My heart was hammering in my chest like it wanted out. I passed mile markers I didn't remember. I didn't check the time, didn't blink. I drove until the forest thinned, until the blackness gave way to something closer to dark gray, until I saw another truck in the distance. Only then did I glance in the mirror. Nothing was behind me. No figure, no red glow. No line stretched into the woods, just empty road. I didn't stop again that night. I didn't talk to anyone about it. What would I even say? That I ran from a kid because they stood too still? Because something I couldn't explain was tethered to them like a leash? I kept thinking about the way they looked when I turned the engine. The reaction, the flinch. The one break in that blank calm. It wasn't fear. It was surprise. Like I'd broken a rule. I didn't sleep much that morning. Pulled into a lot near a gas station and sat behind the wheel until sunrise. I kept checking my side mirrors, watching the tree line, expecting to see that figure appear again, barefoot on the shoulder, still waiting. But nothing did. Eventually, I drove back to the depot, told them I was taking time off. I never ran that route again. I avoided anything that cut through remote stretches at night, switched jobs, safer routes, shorter hours, closer to home. There's something about night driving in unfamiliar territory that messes with your senses. I've been behind the wheel for over a decade now, and I've learned to trust the hum of the tires more than the scenery out the window. You start to feel like you're the only person alive on those long, empty stretches. That's how it was that night. I was hauling a refrigerated load through the UK, headed north along a secondary route I didn't usually take. There was construction on the main A1, and dispatch had suggested this detour. The route was narrow, winding, and poorly lit. The kind of road where high beams barely matter, and every hedgerow looks like it could be hiding something. The sky was overcast, no stars, no moonlight, just a thick gray-black dome pressing down. I couldn't focus. Something about the silence inside the cab was wrong. The usual comfort I get from the radio wasn't kicking in. I kept fiddling with the dial, jumping between local talk, static, and music that didn't suit my mood. Eventually, I gave up and turned the volume down. When I looked up again, I had about 3 seconds to react. There, sprawled across the road, was a man. I yanked the wheel to the left, tires screeching on the wet asphalt as I swerved just enough to avoid running straight over him. The trailer swung slightly, but held steady. I brought the truck to a stop a few yards ahead and turned on the hazards. My hands were shaking before I even opened the door. The air outside was bitter, cutting into me through my jacket as I jogged back down the road. The man hadn't moved. I crouched beside him, heart pounding. "Sir?" I called. No answer. His face was turned away, but I could see the pool of blood around his torso even before I touched him. My stomach turned. The front of his coat was torn open, and the dark stain of blood stretched from the center of his chest outward. No need to check for a pulse, I could already smell the copper. I backed up instinctively, nearly stumbling. My fingers fumbled with my phone. I called 999 and tried to explain where I was, my voice lower than usual, flat with shock. The dispatcher told me to stay put and wait for the authorities. I told them there were no landmarks nearby, just an old service road cutting through farmland. They said help was on the way. And then I heard them. Footsteps, running, not one person, two. I looked up the road. Dim silhouettes, fast moving. One of them was carrying something, a duffel bag by the looks of it. I didn't wait to find out what was inside. My instinct screamed, "Get to the truck." I turned and bolted. My boots slapped the wet pavement as I pushed toward the cab, lungs burning. Behind me, the two figures slowed near the body. I risked a glance over my shoulder. One dropped the bag beside the dead man. The other spotted me. I climbed into the cab, slammed the door, and locked it. As I reached for the ignition, the passenger side handle rattled. He was trying to climb up. My body moved on pure fear. I threw the door open into his face. He yelped and fell backwards onto the road. I didn't check to see if he was getting up. I slammed the door, hit the ignition, and floored it. The truck growled forward, engine roaring into the silence. But I wasn't alone on that road anymore. I watched the headlights behind me close in, weaving slightly as the car picked up speed. It was the same one I'd seen back near the body, and now it was chasing me, hard. I pushed the rig faster, even knowing it wasn't built for speed. The weight in the trailer dragged on the engine, making every turn tighter, every gear change slower than I wanted. The car kept gaining. He was smaller, faster, and didn't care if the road was built for it or not. The truck creaked and strained around each bend, but I couldn't stop. I just needed space 1 minute, even 30 seconds. I needed something to work with. He got close enough that I could see his face lit by my trailer's lights, young, expression locked in, determined. Too close now. I slammed the brakes. The truck screamed, tires biting into the road as the weight shifted violently. I was thrown forward in my seat. There was no crash behind me, just an empty silence where I expected impact. When I looked back, the headlights were gone. For a few seconds, I thought I'd lost him. Then I saw a faint trail of dust settling over a side road barely visible in the dark. He'd turned off, probably trying to loop around. I didn't plan on sticking around to find out. I shifted gears and picked up speed again. The road straightened out, long and narrow. Trees closed in on either side. That's when I saw them up ahead, two vehicles parked across the road, nose to nose. Headlights beaming straight at me. Same two cars. Same bastards, they'd set up a block. I didn't slow down. They weren't blocking the road to talk. If they wanted me dead that badly, I wasn't going to make it easy for them. My grip tightened on the wheel, eyes locked on the gap between the bumpers. They stood off to the sides, probably thinking I'd stop or flinch. I didn't. I aimed center mass and accelerated. The truck hit the blockade like a wrecking ball. Metal tore. Something popped. One of their headlights exploded and sent a spray of glass across my windshield. The truck groaned but kept moving. I kept my foot down for miles, not daring to look back until I was sure there were no more headlights behind me. But even then, I didn't feel safe. The road eventually opened into a bypass with a fuel station glowing like a lighthouse in the dark. I pulled in, not because I needed diesel, but because I needed air. I parked far from the pumps and cut the engine. The silence inside the cab hit harder than I expected. My ears were ringing from the adrenaline. I sat for a moment, hands still locked around the wheel. Every muscle in my body felt tense, like my system hadn't realized the danger was over. If it was over, I checked the mirrors, no movement, no cars. No headlights. I climbed out and walked toward the restroom, hoping the cold air might ground me. At the sink, I splashed water on my face and stared at myself in the mirror. There were red marks on my neck from the seatbelt, and I hadn't realized how much my hands were shaking until I tried to dry them. Back at the truck, I called it in. Not to dispatch, this wasn't something I wanted logged as a delivery delay. I called the police. I gave them the location where I'd found the body, told them what happened, what I saw, how I'd been chased. They didn't ask much, just said someone would follow up. I didn't tell them everything, not about driving through the roadblock, not yet. I kept driving, not fast, not slow, just steady. Long enough for the sky to shift from black to deep gray, with a hint of orange peeking over the fields. I didn't feel relief. I felt like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. It did 2 hours later. A patrol car found me parked at a delivery depot near Manchester. 2 officers stepped out. Not aggressive, not friendly, just official. They asked me to explain what happened again. I gave them a cleaner version this time. Found the body, got scared, saw 2 men, drove away. They exchanged a look. One of them asked if I'd hit anything with my truck. I told the truth. Said they tried to block the road and I drove through. The older cop scribbled notes while the younger one watched my face. Do you remember what they looked like? No. Too dark. Did they say anything to you? No, didn't give them the chance. They nodded, took my info, and said they might follow up later. It wasn't until a day later that I learned what had happened. The 2 men had been gang leaders. The dead body on the road was another gang figure higher up, from what I heard. The guy I'd hit was hospitalized. The other had gotten away. They were calling it an internal war between criminal organizations, and I had just happened to drive right into the middle of it. The cops seemed satisfied. I wasn't, because even after all that, I couldn't shake one thought. The one who got away knows my face. I tried to believe it was over. Told myself it was a random night gone wrong, and that the guy I ran into had bigger enemies to worry about than a truck driver who stumbled onto a dead body. Maybe that lie would have worked if I wasn't back on the road every night, moving through empty stretches of highway with too much time to think. 2 weeks later, I was southbound, loaded and cruising through the Midlands. The night was overcast again, thick clouds pressing down. The same kind of darkness that messes with your instincts. Traffic was light, no headlights behind me. No one ahead. Just me, the hum of the tires, and the creeping sense that something wasn't right. I stopped at a station outside Birmingham for coffee. Just 3 people inside, a cashier, a cleaner, and another driver half asleep in a booth. I took a seat by the window, stirred the coffee without drinking it, eyes scanning the lot. That's when I saw it. A silver sedan parked along the far fence, far from the pumps, lights off, engine idling. It hadn't been there when I pulled in. No one got out. No door opened. The windows were tinted dark. It didn't belong. I didn't wait. I stood, dumped the coffee untouched, walked out like nothing was wrong, and climbed back into the truck. I rolled out slowly, not fast enough to look suspicious, but fast enough to make it clear I wasn't hanging around. I didn't see it follow. Didn't see it leave, but I didn't see it disappear either. And that's what stayed with me, because maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just someone waiting for a friend, taking a nap, checking a map. Or maybe it wasn't. And when you've seen what I've seen, maybe is enough to keep you awake. I started watching more carefully after that, checking my mirrors more often, keeping track of the cars I passed, memorizing license plates when I could. Any vehicle that showed up twice in a night set off alarm bells. I began sleeping with one eye open in rest stops, parking in the far corners where I had a clean view of every angle. It didn't matter that the police had moved on. I hadn't, because the other guy was still out there. And even if I hadn't seen him since, I had a gut feeling I couldn't shake. He remembered me, and I don't think he plans on letting me forget him. I started avoiding the same routes. Didn't tell dispatch why, just made excuses: weather, construction, timing issues. I figured if someone was tracking me using patterns, I'd make it harder for them. The thing is, it only made me more paranoid. Because the longer you look over your shoulder, the more you start to believe someone's actually there. A few nights later, I was parked at a small truck stop off a rural B road, one of those places too small for cameras and too remote for cell signal. I wasn't planning to sleep, just kill a couple hours before the next drop. The diner was closed. The lot was empty except for one van parked across the far side, windows dark, engine off. It hadn't been there when I arrived. I stayed inside the cab, locked everything down, turned off the lights, just sat in the dark and waited. I kept telling myself it was nothing, just a driver catching some sleep, just someone like me, but the tension kept building. And then the van's lights flicked on, no engine noise, just headlights flooding the lot. I couldn't see inside, couldn't see the driver. They didn't move, didn't honk, didn't pull out. Just sat there with their beams pointed right at my truck. That was enough. I turned the ignition and pulled out, swinging wide to avoid passing close to the van. I didn't want to see who was inside anymore. I didn't want them seeing me. I didn't stop until I'd made it back to the main road, far enough away that the truck's engine had space to breathe again. It kept happening. Different places, different nights. Vehicles that stayed too long. Faces that lingered too close to mine at service stations. Moments that didn't make sense. It stopped being coincidence. It stopped being nerves. Someone was watching. And they wanted me to know, but they weren't making a move. Not yet. It was like they were circling, testing me, letting me feel the pressure. The guy who got away that night in the dark, he hadn't disappeared. He'd just taken his time, and now he was getting closer. It's been months now. I still drive, still take contracts, still put in the miles, but something's changed. I don't take breaks unless I have to. I sleep in short bursts, engine running, lights off. I don't talk to other drivers like I used to. I don't linger at rest stops. I don't trust silence. The police haven't called again. No new reports, no follow-up. On paper, I'm just a guy who happened to witness something he shouldn't have. Gave a statement. Moved on, but I haven't moved on. Some nights, I'll spot a car tailing me for just a few exits. Then it turns off, disappears. Other times, I'll hear footsteps outside my cab when I know no one else is around. I'll check the mirrors, check the locks. Nothing. I'll find fingerprints on the driver's side window I don't remember being there. Once, I came back from a bathroom break and found the glove box open. Nothing taken. Just open. I haven't seen his face again, but I felt him. Sometimes I wonder if this is what he wants. Not revenge, not a confrontation. Just this, the slow erosion of peace. The constant whisper in my ear that something's not right, that I'm not alone, that I'll never be alone again. I used to drive to escape. Now I drive because stopping feels worse. Every highway feels longer now. Every turnoff feels like a trap. Every headlight in the mirror could be him. And maybe one night it will be. The heat clung to the truck like a second skin. Even after the sun dipped below the Alabama tree line, the warmth stayed suspended in the air, heavy and damp. My rig was parked near the edge of the lot, where the sodium lights flickered and bugs buzzed in a never-ending frenzy. I'd been on the road since dawn, and my back felt welded to the seat. It was just another Tuesday. I shut off the engine and cracked open the driver's side door to let the humid night air roll in. A wave of diesel fumes, pine, and something vaguely rotten hit me. I didn't care. The silence of the truck stop was almost comforting. The soft rumble of distant idling engines, the occasional thud of trailer doors, and the rhythmic chirp of insects made a strange kind of symphony, familiar, lonely. I was halfway through a soggy sandwich and halfway through a phone call with Crystal, my second ex-wife, when she started in on the usual routine. "Did you eat something green today, or was it all caffeine and nicotine again?" Her voice in my headset felt distant. I laughed without answering, chewing slower. That's when I saw her. She came from the far side of the lot, walking with an uncertain rhythm, young, way too young. Thin limbs like wet branches, clothes clinging in the heat. She stopped a few feet from my door and gave me a look that didn't match her face. Not scared. Not exactly. But hollow, like something inside her had already left. "Want me to clean your truck, sir?" she asked, voice barely audible over the hum of the night. I blinked. My mind caught up a second too late. "I'm sorry, miss," I said, gesturing to the headset. "I'm on the phone, not interested." Her gaze dropped. "Sorry." She turned away quickly and disappeared behind the trailers to my right. Crystal's laughter burst into my ear. "Did that just happen? Was she?" "Yeah," I said, already regretting that I'd looked her in the eye. "Yeah, lot lizard, maybe 16. Should be doing homework instead of..." I trailed off. A sharp pang twisted in my chest. I thought of my daughters, one in middle school, one just starting high school. 1,000 miles away with my first ex. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable. I watched the space where the girl had stood just moments ago. Nothing left there but night and noise. I tried to shake it off. I told myself it wasn't my business. Just another rough story in a place full of them. But her face stuck with me, even as Crystal changed the subject and started talking about her boss again. I only half listened, my eyes scanning the rows of trucks. Something about that girl didn't sit right. I'd seen my fair share of lot lizards, some strung out, some too far gone to care, but this one had something different. Like she didn't belong in that scene at all. She wasn't selling anything with her body language. No confidence, no seduction, just desperation. Crystal's voice broke through my thoughts. "You're quiet. Don't tell me she got to you." I forced a chuckle. "Nah, I'm just tired." "Sure. You gonna be okay?" "Yeah, I'll text you when I wake up. Good night." Hugs and kisses, call ended. Silence returned. I stared at the dark horizon past the edge of the lot. I thought about that girl again. How young she looked. How her voice had cracked on the word sir. I'd seen teenagers pretending to be adults before, but she wasn't pretending. She looked like someone who had already given up. It brought back a memory. A couple months earlier in Amarillo, I'd watched another girl go from truck to truck like a ghost in denim shorts. No hesitation, no small talk. In and out of rigs like it was just another job. I remembered her shoes bright pink, worn out. I remembered the way the trailer rocked. The rhythm of it. There was something rotten in the underbelly of the highway. You see it long enough, and you start to ignore it. That's how it survives. Not with secrets, but with silence. I finished the sandwich, balled up the wrapper, and tossed it in the trash. The taste had gone sour in my mouth. I didn't want to be part of that silence tonight. I grabbed my towel and toiletry kit and headed toward the showers. The inside of the truck stop was buzzing, drivers watching muted TVs, microwaves humming, a couple arguing over scratch-off tickets. Normal chaos. It calmed me down. I took my time. The hot water helped. I scrubbed it off the day and tried to let my mind cool down. By the time I got back to the truck, the girl had almost faded from memory. Almost. Back in the truck, everything felt heavier. The night had deepened. The air was thicker, and even the bugs had quieted. I crawled into the sleeper, cracked the small vent, and lit a cigarette. The ember glowed in the dark like a single watchful eye. I wasn't planning on staying awake long. The shower had relaxed me, but my thoughts hadn't cooled off. I lay there, staring into nothing, listening to the occasional creak of suspension and far-off doors slamming, a lullaby of the lonely. Then, something shifted, a muffled sound from the rig next to mine. Not a voice, not quite. More like a grunt or a bark. Then a loud slam. A door opening, then slamming shut. Movement. I sat up. From the narrow space between our trucks, I saw a shadow stumble forward. A large man, thick build, trucker hat low over his brow, moving fast. A puff of smoke trailed him, lit briefly by the glow of a cigarette. He disappeared between the rows toward the main building. Before I could settle back in, the rig next to mine rocked slightly. I heard the quiet clunk of a door being opened again. She came out. The same girl. No shoes. Her steps were unsure on the gravel. In the dim light, I could finally see her clearly. Her left cheek was swollen, a bruise already turning purple. There was a welt round, angry, and unmistakably shaped like a fist. She looked up, saw me through the glass. Our eyes locked for a second. She didn't speak. She raised a single finger to her lips and shook her head, slow and pleading. Her eyes shimmered. Then, without a sound, she turned and sprinted barefoot toward the woods at the edge of the lot. I froze. My hand was already on the door handle. I could have called out. Could have jumped down and gone after her. Could have called the cops. But I didn't. Something about the look she gave me. It didn't just ask for silence. It demanded it. Like breaking it would somehow make things worse. For her, maybe even for me. I stayed there, hand still on the latch, watching the trees where she disappeared. My cigarette had burned down to the filter. 5 minutes passed, maybe less. I hadn't moved. I was still staring at the woods when I heard boots crunching gravel. He was back. The man emerged from between the trailers, walking slower now, looking from side to side like he'd lost something. The cigarette was gone. His hands clenched and unclenched, pacing with agitation. He passed my cab without looking, his eyes sweeping the darkness beyond the parked trucks. Then he stopped. He stood near where she had run, scanned the tree line, and took a few hesitant steps toward the brush. He didn't go in, just hovered at the edge like something was holding him back. Like the woods weren't his to enter. He cursed, low, sharp, a sound more animal than human. Then he turned and walked back the way he came, fast. He climbed into his rig, slammed the door shut, and didn't turn the engine on. I waited. 10 minutes. Then the headlights flicked on, and his truck roared to life. He peeled out of the lot, tires kicking up dust and loose rock. The sound of his exit echoed long after he was gone. And still I hadn't moved. I should have done something. Anything. But that moment, that brief, terrifying moment when she looked at me, had rooted me in place. There was something in her eyes I couldn't explain. Not fear, something more final than that. Resignation, maybe. Like she knew what was coming. Like she had already survived worse. The man with the trucker hat hadn't said a word. But everything about him screamed violence. Not rage, control, a type of cruelty that doesn't need to shout. I sat in the dark for a long time, hands still resting on the door handle. At some point, I closed the vent and lay back down. I didn't sleep. I don't think I even blinked. It took weeks before I saw her again on a TV screen, frozen in time. I was in a diner just off I-20 in Mississippi, nursing a bitter cup of coffee and waiting on my eggs when the news segment caught my ear. The screen above the counter flickered to a familiar scene. Police tape, flashing lights, a stretch of trees near a truck stop. My stomach dropped before the anchor said a word. The photo they showed was low res, probably taken from a school ID or some social media post. But it was her, same frail frame, same sad, hollow eyes. Even in a still image, she looked like she was trying to disappear. She had been found in the woods barefoot, badly beaten. Cause of death withheld. The authorities were vague, but they linked her to a series of unsolved cases spanning 5 states. 12 women, all found near interstates, all young, all bruised the same way, all missing their shoes. The FBI called it a pattern, gave it a name, Highway Serial Killings Initiative. Made it sound like a spreadsheet, clean, clinical. Like they weren't talking about girls who died alone in the dirt while truck engines hummed in the distance. I couldn't breathe. I left my food on the table, untouched, and walked out without paying. Sat in the cab with the engine off, trying to make sense of the static in my head. It was her, no doubt, and I had been the last one to see her alive. I still think about her. Not every day, but enough. Enough that I haven't driven through Alabama since. Enough that I still keep the vent closed when I sleep, even in summer. Some nights I lie awake and replay it all, the look on her face, the bruise, the bare feet, the way she vanished into those woods like she knew they'd hide her better than any person could. And that look she gave me. I've never seen eyes say so much with so little. No words, just that small trembling gesture. Like she'd already decided my silence was safer than my help. I've gone over it 1,000 ways. What if I had called someone? What if I had shouted when she ran? What if I had followed her, kept her in sight until the cops arrived? Would she still be alive? Or would he have found her anyway and me with her? That's the part that eats at me. Because deep down, I didn't freeze because I was afraid of him. I froze because I believed her. Because something in her silence told me the truth was already too heavy to carry. I never learned her name. Just a face that flares to life when the night's too quiet, when the highway hums just right, when the guilt tightens like a belt across my ribs. They say serial killers look like everyone else. So do their victims. I don't look in the mirrors at truck stops anymore, not for too long. Not because I'm afraid of what I'll see, but because I already know what I didn't do. And that's enough to haunt me forever. If you've ever gone through something similar, or know someone who has, leave a comment below. Sometimes, just telling it is already a way to protect yourself. And if this video made you think twice before letting your guard down, then it was already worth it. And if you want to keep hearing stories that might help keep you alive, subscribe. The next story could be yours.